Okay, young historians, this is a overview of the NHD project categories that you can choose from to present your research in January and February. All of this information is also available in more detail on the NHD website. I'll have a link to that on Google Classroom. There's a lot of other resources that will help you out on Google Classroom. But the big thing now, you had three big choices in this entire project. Your topic, are you going to work alone or with a partner? And then now, what kind of project are you going to select? All projects have some things in common. They all must have a clear thesis statement. They all must have detailed research that supports that thesis. They all have to have primary sources as part of the research. That's part of the rubric. They all must have an annotated bibliography and a process paper. Now, the only one that doesn't have to have a process paper is an individual paper. I'll talk about that a little later. But everyone's got to have an annotated bibliography. Every resource must be annotated, as I have given you examples of and as you had to do when you turned in your skeleton bibliography. All of your projects must be original, and all projects are going to be assessed based on the NHD rubrics. Those are available on Google Classroom. I utilize the same rubrics because that's what the NHD competition does. I'm not a perfect fan of the rubrics, but I'm going to use them anyways because our goal here is to be very, very successful in a competition. Now, you can choose between these 5 projects if you are working as an individual: exhibit, documentary, performance, website, and paper. If you're working in a group, you can only do the top 4. You can't do a paper as a group. So let's go through each of these projects real quick to give you some ins and outs so that you know what I'm talking about. An exhibit looks like this. Please do not think of it as a poster board or a trifold because it isn't. If you do it as a poster board or trifold, it's not going to go very well. Exhibits are bigger, better, badder than any poster board or trifold you've ever created. According to NHD, it's a visual representation of a topic and its significance in history, much like a museum exhibit. Think about when you go to museums. Think about the exhibits that we saw in the Kenosha Civil War Museum or any other museum you've been to. Labels, captions, visual images, objects, artifacts, all that kind of stuff. An exhibit only has 500 original words, including titles. That is your word limit, and yes, they will count it. I've done it before as an assistant judge. They count the words. So any word that you write counts. What doesn't count in those 500 words? Primary source quotes, basic captions, and any citations. Exhibits can be 72 inches tall, that is 6 feet, 40 inches wide, and 30 inches deep. It's almost like, think of a box that is 6 feet tall, 40 inches wide, 30 inches deep. Your exhibit has to fit into that box. You can use multimedia, but you can only use a total of 3 minutes. That would be audio and visual. And you get all the materials for your exhibit. I don't order a whole bunch of trifold boards because you might not use a trifold board. You can see some exhibits are, your typical exhibit here is what looks like a trifold, but you've also got artifacts down here. You've got the title up top here. You'll notice it's just not on white paper. This one is kind of bland. This is an exhibit that was made out of it's about Rosa Parks, so it's made out of a bus seat, a bus bench about her. This was at a state competition a little while ago. This, to me, down here doesn't help you at all, just books on Rosa Parks, but you'll see that it's somewhat creative. Here's an exhibit that's visible on 4 sides. You have different size limits for a 4-sided exhibit. It could rotate, or maybe you walk around it. This is an exhibit about the creation of the potty, and there you got a little potty. What do you know? In fact, one year at the state competition, there were 2 exhibits that were French fry boxes. Whatever the case, if you look at an exhibit, you notice that all of them have to be a certain size. All of them have the same size limit. All of them have the same word limit. All of them are going to have an annotated bibliography. All of them are going to have a title and a thesis statement, sometimes a little video. Why would you do an exhibit? Because you have a visual topic, because you're good at putting visual spatial things together, and because everybody in your group wants to do an exhibit if you're working with a group. Why don't do an exhibit? Because your topic is not visual, you're not good at that, and you can't fit it into the 500 word limit. Some notes on exhibits. You have to have subtitles that are necessary to organize your exhibit. Those are your buckets. You can creatively title those subtitles, but that's why you have buckets. That's how you organize your exhibit. You have to cite your sources. That's why on your bibliography or on your notes, I'm expecting every piece of information to have a resource. I've said that very many times. You have to cite your sources on your exhibit within your text. Only use media if it helps support your thesis. Only do anything on your exhibit if it helps support your thesis. You organize your exhibit first and you glue it last. This is not something you want to throw together though. You're going to use matting. You want to have clear cuts and things like that. And exhibits are very easy to do, and they're very easy to do poorly. All right? So consider all that if you want to do an exhibit. A documentary is sort of like a History Channel documentary. This is an example of a documentary from a few years ago. This was done by Lexi Vanden Heuvel. She was first in the nation. When I clipped this last year, you'll notice that she put it on YouTube. She has 16,000 views for it. It's being used by some medical schools about how Florence Nightingale revolutionized counting the dead. Okay, so the documentary, 10 minutes. You'll notice hers is 9:59. It uses images such as film, video, and photographs, and audio such as music excerpts from tapes, we call those discs now, and voiceovers to present a topic. All right. It is a 10-minute maximum documentary, 10 minutes in length. No footnotes are needed for the script. That's kind of a bonus. There is no word limit for a documentary. You do have credits at the end. NHD requires those. They're kind of clunky. I can talk about those when you see and do a documentary. And there are a ton of NHD documentary examples online. There's a ton on YouTube. They have a lot of NHD documentary examples available on the NHD site that is linked on Google Classroom. Why would you do a documentary? Because your topic fits it. Your topic might have a lot of images and a lot of multimedia. The more recent the topic, the more apt it could be to fit into the documentary category. If you like using video editing, like iMovie, or some people use Final Cut Pro, but most people will use iMovie. If you think you can fill a good portion of 10 minutes of video being images and video, and also because you can be creative, okay? Why not to do a documentary? Because your topic has few images and no multimedia. If you were doing something from the early 1800s or the 1700s or 1600s, I wouldn't do a documentary because there's not a lot of images that are different. Also, documentaries are very time consuming. I can tell you that. If you're working with a partnership, documentaries can only be done pretty much on one computer. It's tough to share them. There is some online video editing software that you can use. One's called WeVideo, but in general, it's typically done on one computer. Some notes about documentaries. You always write your script first. Then you put your images and video to your script. It's almost easier to record your script and match images and video to your script in your recording than it is vice versa. News headlines make great images, those graphic newspapers that we have. Interviews can be included in your documentary, but you don't want them to be too long. Think about it. If you have a minute interview for a 10-minute documentary, that's like having a 1 page out of a 10-page paper be somebody else's voice. And all images in a documentary have to be cited. It's usually done in a different bibliography. That's why you don't want to go to just Google images. You want to find a collection of images. It's a lot easier to cite it. You don't use clip art in a documentary, and you do not appear in the documentary. It's not like you in front of a screen or anything like that. You are narrating over images and existing video. Okay? So if you're thinking about a documentary, that's some information for you. Check out examples online. A performance can be done individually or in a group. Okay? Performances are dramatic portrayals of a topic and its significance in history. They're original and creative. They are not just oral reports. They're not just speeches. They are dramatic. All right? Performances can be 10 minutes max. You do not need footnotes or citations for your script in performances. You do all the costumes. You do all the multimedia if you use it. You do the performing. You do set up the stage. You've got to do all of that yourself. Nobody can help you set up anything. That's in the rules. And your performance has to eventually be memorized. It needs to be memorized for our NHD night on February 6th. Why would you do a performance? Because your topic is dramatic, because you can set up like a really good scene for performers, and because you enjoy performing in front of others. You like performing. That was why you would do a performance. I did have one student, by the way, one year, who did a performance because he didn't like performing and he wanted to stretch himself. He ended up coming third in the state. That was pretty cool. Why not perform? Because your topic isn't very dramatic, you can't set up a great scene, and you don't enjoy performing in front of others. Some performance notes. You always write your script first. You write your script based on your buckets. You've got to set up some sort of scene. It does have to eventually be memorized, so get going on that. The good news is that when you perform it in front of a group, they don't have your script. The only person who will ever have your script when you're performing is me. You can incorporate primary source quotes into your performance, which is pretty awesome. You let the voices of the past tell the story. And it's also important to remember that props and costumes are important, but not as much as the content. All right? Sometimes when it comes to an NHD performance, less is more. So if you're interested in doing a performance, think about it. I'm going to go out on a limb and say performance is typically the easiest of all of the projects to complete, because you don't have to worry about citations. It's not as labor intensive as a documentary is. And whenever you perform it, if you mess up, the only person who's going to know that you messed up is you. So just consider that. And if you're in it to win it, sometimes performances have the least number of competitors. A website. Think of a website as a combination between an exhibit and a digital paper. All right. A website is exactly what you think it's going to be, an interactive, multimedia, and text-based site that relates to the importance of your research. That's pretty much the way that I would describe it. Your website has to stand alone. You cannot embed external links. You don't link to other sites. You don't link to other YouTube videos or anything like that. Everything has to be within your site. That's how you have 100 megabyte maximum, which includes your video. And your multimedia, your video can only be, I think, a maximum of 3 minutes long as it is. Websites have 1,200 student-created words maximum, and yes, they will be counted. I will ask for your count. And your website should be interactive. It's not just a paper that you have slapped up online. You could do a website is if your topic has a lot of non-textual materials, like a lot of images and multimedia. And if you're kind of thinking between a website and a exhibit, maybe you want to use more than 500 original words. And also, if you enjoy technology, you could do a website. Why would you not do a website? If your research is going to be all text, you don't have a lot of images or video or anything like that, don't do it. And then don't do it if technology doesn't like you. So for some website notes, you do have to have citations in the body of your website. That is a must. You have to use the NHD Web Creator. This is the NHD Web Creator right here. It looks like this. I've been playing around with it a little bit. A couple students have already played around with it. I'm going to tell you that it is very, very basic. It's somewhat clunky, which is both good and bad. It's good that it's basic, which means you're not going to be all worried about the bells and whistles and things like that. But it's also kind of clunky, so it's not all that easy to use. They used to use NHD, used to use Weebly, but they don't use Weebly anymore. So this is how you will build a website. All right. Everything in your website has to be hosted on your website, no outside links. You don't include quizzes or puzzles or opinion polls on your website because those don't support a thesis. The only thing you want on your website is supporting your thesis, and you have to think about how you can get your website interactive. More than just, hey, I'm going to have a couple links here and there within the website. All right? So think about that, how you can get it interactive. The final possible project is a paper. This is a traditional research paper. It's basically all text. You write a historic, you can write a creative paper, such as a fictional diary or a poem. I have had some students do that. I've never seen one of those go to the national competition. They have gone to the state competition. So just kind of keep that in mind. But if you want to be a creative writer, you can do that. I think that's more enjoyable anyways. Your paper is between 1,500 and 2,500 words. That includes quotes. So any primary source quote is included in your word count for your paper. Your citations are done in MLA format. I will sit down with you and I will teach you how to cite your sources in a paper. And you do not need to use a single image unless you feel it is entirely necessary. For example, if I was doing a paper on William Howard Taft, I wouldn't include an image of William Howard Taft because it wouldn't help support my thesis, unless my paper is on the images of William Howard Taft, which, why would I do that? All right, so you don't need any images. Why would you do a paper? Because you like to write, and because you don't need images or multimedia. Why not do a paper? Because you don't like to write, and if you need images or multimedia. For paper notes, you got to have footnotes, 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 citations, citations, citations. And also you have to proofread, proofread, proofread. You're gonna want, Ms. Beatty to go through your paper, all right, for grammar, mechanics, and things like that. I will as well, of course. I'll proofread it. But you want others to proofread it, okay? And also include images and diagrams only if it supports the thesis. So my friends, those are our 5 categories. Each one of those categories that you choose, though, you are going to have a project plan. Those are going to be available on Google Classroom. That's where you plan your project. A good friend of mine, Mr. Schwieters, used to teach science in 8th grade. He said, plan your work your plan. That's what you want to do. Those project plans have to be done before you dig into they should be done before you dig into your project. Some final thoughts before I get to a calendar is right now is really the time to think. Here we are in December. January is crunch time. So you need to really start thinking after you've been working on this on and off, some of you more on, some of you more off, but you've been working on it from September, October, November, and now into December. What is your goal? Is your goal eventually to survive, to present something on February 6th and then never visit it again? All right, keep that in mind. Is your goal to compete? To compete at the regional competition at UWM on February 29th? If so, keep that in mind. Or is your goal to win? Is your goal to be one of these cats right here, one of these young historical cats that at the state competition won and moved on to the national competition? This gang was from 2 years ago. What is your goal? That should be your driving force here. The regional competition, we can send this many projects. We can send 5 individual and 5 group projects from each category. So we can send a total of 45 projects. I believe we have this year around 55 or 60 projects. All right, there are 30-something individual projects and I think 20 group projects that are going to be done, maybe less than 20. So we can send that many projects to UWM. I'm going to tell you that I'm not going to send a project, though, that I don't think is competitive. So if you want to compete, you have to have a competitive project. All right, gang, this brings us to NHD crunch time. That's what we call January. If you look at January, it's a beautiful month. It's my birthday month. I've got a birthday buddy in the class. She knows who she is. Maybe there's another one. I don't know. She'll have to tell me. But if we look at this month, we don't get back to school until Monday the 6th. And my plan as of now is to use those 2 weeks, those first 2 weeks, for crunch time. That's NHD crunch time. That means our 70s are dedicated to NHD. That means our 50s are dedicated to NHD. That means any assignment outside of class in my class is dedicated to NHD. That's the crunch time. I'll also come in on the weekends. All right? You do not have school on the 20th. That's Martin Luther King Jr. Day. You might not have school here. I don't know. There's another day that you don't have school. I don't know for a fact yet. But then, starting the 21st of January, I'm expecting projects to come in the draft form. All right? Typically, that's when I'm going to start reading the rough draft of a paper. I'm going to see the draft of a website. I'm going to want to see the basic outline and layout and text of an exhibit. I want an overview script for a documentary and a performance. Documentaries will not be done by that time unless you burn the midnight oil, because it's tough to do that. Maybe documentaries coming here. But here's the deal. I want projects to be turned in here so I can give you feedback so you can improve, because my plan is getting back to history that the third and fourth week of January. We're going to go back to history now. We're going back to regular history. All right? Because then it comes to February. February is going to be awesome and crazy. On February 6th, that Thursday night, is the NHD Showcase. That is when you are going to show your projects. They go live. That's a very, very important date, that February 6th, because that is when I will be using whatever project you present on that date. That's going to be what I use to determine who's going to go to UWM on the 29th. All right? Because registration for UWM has to happen on Tuesday, by Tuesday the 11th. We have a very, very short turnaround to do that. So I'm going to let people know probably on that Monday, and you're going to have to register by that Tuesday. All right, it's pretty important that you do that. So I'm going to be crunching my and giving feedback on all of them on that Friday and Saturday there. So now we've got that registration is on that Tuesday the 11th, because the NHD Regional at UWM is right there, February 29th. I know it is a 4-day weekend. I've told your parents. I've let them know. We had no other choice. If we were going to do the Madison competition, that would have been on the 22nd. Everything would have had to move up a week, and I think you guys would have been just manically stressed out. So, regionals at UWM, February 29th. If you can't make it, I totally understand it. Hopefully you're going to be available to make it if you qualify. Then we go to March, and March, of course, all we're looking forward to is spring break. I get that. But what will people be doing in March? You can continue to make your projects better. If you go to the regional competition and you move on, you can make your project better for the state competition. If you don't go to the regional competition, you can still improve your project. I want the growth mindset. I want your best work. In April, we've got a big month in April coming up, because on April 18th, that Saturday, in Madison is NHD State. Hopefully, some of you will qualify for that competition, and we'll go up to Madison and have a beautiful day on the 18th. It'll be awesome. Maybe we can hang out with my daughter, who's a freshman there. That'll be fun. But NHD State going to Madison, that is always a great time. Plus, that should be an exciting time, because the next Monday, we are in Washington, D.C. on the 20th. All right, the 20th to the 24th. We're heading there. It's 130-something days away. I can't wait. It'll be great to celebrate in Washington, D.C., because some of you, hopefully, will be going back to Washington, D.C. in June if you make it to the national competition. But that state competition is a good time. It's a ton of fun. Hopefully, some of you will qualify for that. We then move to May. For May, for almost all of you, NHD is done. But we do have March to the Memorials, which is a very cool service project, and we're going to be talking about that. We're going to have a project to do with that in our 50s. March to the Memorials is going to be coming up that week. Right before Memorial Day. And then it's June of 2020. Yes, I'm already looking at June. I'm already looking at June 10th. I'm already looking at saying goodbye to all of you for the last time as my young historians. Unless you don't go up to the upper school, you stay in 8th grade. Or unless, I don't know, maybe I go teach in college somewhere and you're one of my students. Who knows? Could happen. But then NHD Nationals is the following week there. It is the 15th, 16th, 17th, and 18th. We've sent 5 projects each of the last 2 years to NHD Nationals. That's a lot. So maybe your project will be one of those. Last thing I want to do, gang, is say, listen, this is up to you. All right, I've tried to motivate you. I've tried to push you. I'm going to push you even more and more and more in January during crunch time. But you can do it. I believe in you. I believe in every one of you, all 78 of you. I totally believe that you can do well on this project to whatever degree you want to do it. If you want to survive, I'm here to help you survive. If you want to compete, I'm here to help you compete. If you want to win, I'm here to help you win. But I believe in you. You need to believe in yourself. But you also have to realize that the single sole determinant of your success is you. It's your attitude, it's your work ethic, it's your perseverance, it's your resilience, it's your push to grow, it's that growth mindset. You can do it. I promise you, I believe in you, but I want you to believe in yourselves, and I want you to realize that you can do some magical stuff here when it comes to NHD. but it's up to you. All right? I hope this overview helps. I hope you get a chance to watch it. Sit back. If you have any questions about this content, about the project categories, let me know. But now it's time to get going on your projects. All right?